Let's just get into this. PTSD. A lot of people in the world have it, some of which choose to push back against the fight for mental health, which leads to their PTSD remaining unexplained since they see it as not real. For those who don't know what PTSD is, it stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's something when in severe cases can potentially ruin someone's life. And for those out there who say they have PTSD to every little thing, no you don't. Like for example, I had ordered a vegetarian chicken burger from a place before because I'm allergic to meat, and I realized after I bit into it that they gave me a meat burger. Sure, I ended up struggling to breathe for a while, but I don't go around saying I have PTSD, because I don't. Mix-ups, well, at least that situation. Mix-ups happen. Now, would I go out of my way to order from that place again? No. But will I order something if whoever I'm with is also going there? Hell yeah. I'll just be more careful and double check before biting into my food. And no, the double checking is not a sign of PTSD, it's a sign that you learned from your mistakes. Not the same thing. However, that doesn't mean that there still aren't instances that are downplayed that can still lead to a very real PTSD. For instance, let's go with my allergic reaction example again. When there's a few instances here and there when your food is made by a random person and you end up having an allergic reaction to it, yeah, that can be painful and frightening, and it happens. But it's not necessarily PTSD. Yes, it can be a leadway to PTSD if left unchecked, but it itself isn't. However, let's say every time you go over to a family member's place for dinner, bringing your own food and leaving it into the fridge because, say, you have an allergy that's like so severe and out of place that you might as well just bring your own food. And every time you have an allergic reaction so severe, that you need it to be rushed to the hospital, and in the end, every time the family says you're to blame, which leads to you being terrified of eating because you have no clue what's going on and you don't trust someone to not poison you, even if you say live alone and have your own food in the fridge at all times, and no one ever comes over, then yeah, that's far more closely related to PTSD. And of course, there are far more events that can lead to having PTSD, such as, in trigger warning, rape, abuse from parents and loved ones, being attacked but then either no one believes you or say you're at fault, losing a loved one, practically the majority of military and nurse work, car accidents, and so much more. And of course, when it comes to writing, there are plenty of symptoms you can have your characters present in order to show and prove that they have PTSD from another part of the story. These symptoms can include, but are not limited to, being easily startled or frightened, always being on guard for danger, self-destructive behavior, trouble sleeping, trouble concentrating, irritability, outbursts of anger, flashbacks, shame or guilt to the point of being overwhelmed, nightmares, anxiety, and etc. And unfortunately, I'm sorry to tell you all, but there's no cure for PTSD. At least not any sort of pill one can take like they have a minor cold. But there are still methods to make PTSD more tolerable. And take this as someone with BPD, I know they're not the same thing, but a lot of symptoms are similar, and this is what had worked for me. When I was getting treated, I did a few different things. Changed my workplace, started medication, saw a psychiatrist occasionally, did CBT/DBT with a professional, and finally, moved out onto my own to a whole nother province. However, there are still plenty of downsides for each treatment. For instance, the workplace may be worse after some time, or at least give you less rest. The medication led to me having memory loss and blackouts to the point I didn't know who I was. Which sucks, cause that was literally the only downside. The medication was practically perfect for months, and in fact it even kicked in instantly for me. Well, after a few minutes, but basically instantly compared to other examples. Some people had to wait around, I believe, 2 years, as told before they found any changes to the medication. Imagine that. Like, you're trying to work on yourself, make yourself feel better, make yourself more of a better person, so you try going on medication. And it takes 2 years for the medication to work. Even worse if you don't have health insurance, because that stuff is not cheap. Oof. Anyway, due to the medical system, I regularly got canceled on or rescheduled while I was on my way to my appointment, as in like 5 minutes before getting to the hospital. Sometimes you may not like the professional, but very much, or it can end up worse due to all of the repetition. For instance, every single appointment I went to, the professional I saw regularly just told me the same things. I wouldn't even say she really practiced giving me examples of DPD and CPD. She just basically told me what it was and gave examples of herself practicing it every single appointment. And I went to, like, I believe 12 to 15 of these appointments. So yeah, that's a massive downside, especially when it comes to repetition, if you don't like repetition and especially repeating yourself. And finally, bunch of new expenses when you go to live out on your own. Which honestly is fine with me because I'm good at budgeting, but there is also a lot of stress with being out all on your own. But it'll go away eventually. Still scared for tax season though, because I don't know how to do them. Tried last year, but they legit wouldn't let me process it. So really, in the end, it all just depends on what you think your each individual characters can handle. Remember, not every person is going to have the same reaction to the same event. Speaking of events, what about the events that can trigger one's PTSD? Well, I'm glad you asked. A character's PTSD can be triggered by a variety of areas and situations, such as being in a car accident can be triggered by being in a car, around a road, close to an accident, or close to having another accident. Much like when I had gotten hit by a truck a few years ago, I spent a little around a year absolutely terrified of being around cars. Which sucks when you live in a city. But you want to know what helped me? Going for rides on my dad's motorcycle. Sure, I was terrified, but I trusted him to know what he was doing and ensure nothing bad would happen. And yes, I do still get panic attacks from time to time when, say, a car comes too close to hitting me and hits the brakes right before hitting my kneecaps, or being in a car with a driver I don't trust. Being abused as a child can be triggered by driving past their old house/neighborhood, showing them toys/shows from their childhood, or even just them seeing their family/childhood friends. And finally, watching someone die can be triggered by watching death scenes on TV, hearing about that person, seeing old pictures of that person, watching another person die, and so much more. There are plenty of causes and forms of PTSD. Like, for example, not everyone with PTSD will have a huge breakdown of a reaction. Some will even go cold, silent, and emotionless. And remember, all of this is for writing purposes, and I am by no means a professional, just a Gen Z obsessed with mental health and psychology. Check out my novels on Amazon Kobo, link in description. Check out Creative Writing Club Premium on Patreon, Spotify, link in description. Check out Quill and Scroll Stash in the description. Check out Creative Writing Club Discord server in the description. Check out my personal Instagram at dark_night_wolves. And it's time to bring this meeting to an end, so I can get the packing for my bag for a trip.